Well, good morning, everybody. Top of the morning to you. 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. Here we are again, live for another show, talking about the real estate brief. Hopefully, you guys had a good day yesterday. Yesterday's live stream was interesting. It was all about economy, and then we switched the gears and talked about real estate and MLS indication and portals and that kind of stuff, but from a different perspective. So, if you're still interested in that kind of conversation, you can go back and check that out. So please do so. But dude, thank you guys for being here. Thank you for tuning in again, taking some time out of your busy schedules to come and listen to me talk about news and in regards to real estate. I do greatly appreciate that. Good to see you guys. Glad you guys are here. I see you guys are logging in. That's great. Liz and everybody, good to see you guys. Thank you guys for being here. So just for those that are just now tuning in and watching, I'll briefly tell you kind of what I do here. I've been in real estate for over 20 years. I've been doing this for a long time. Seen all different types of markets. I've also seen how confusing things can be inside of the real estate industry. Bobby, good to see you, my friend. Glad you are here, my friend. Let me know how the training's going. I know you're in the middle of deep training for, I believe, a triathlon, man. Keep up the great work. I am following you on TikTok, by the way, and watching you. It's pretty cool to watch your journey here and your intensity in your training. It's been awesome, man. So do thank you for coming in. But anyway, I've been in real estate for a very long time, and I've watched all kinds of confusion come into our market when the market goes up, and it's great, and it goes down, and media says all these type of things. And so I have, for many years, kept a tradition of just every morning waking up and perusing through specific real estate sites and going through the details and seeing what's going on in the industry and just keeping my finger on the pulse. And I realized, you know what? I would like to do that with others. And so I decided to do a live stream doing just that. Basically, you guys coming along with me as I go through news articles that I would do by myself, usually drinking coffee. And I wanted to do a live stream doing just that, talking through things. I love comments and people sharing and things like that. So don't be afraid to be proactive. I will stop my rants and conversation to address your comments. I do like that. I love that kind of engagement. Shine Wob, thank you for the follow. Greatly appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you. But anyway, yeah, so that's what I do here. I go through and just go through all kinds of news articles, and today's no different. I'm just going to give you my opinions and my observations about what I see is going on in the real estate industry, and that's it. That's what we do. So today, what I'm going to be doing is I've got a few different articles we're going to go through, and I never know how many I can get through. I always have these great ideas, and I'm going to do all kinds of other ones. And then, obviously I get to talking about one and we get delayed, and maybe I'll roll that over. Oh, Bobby, he said, yeah, what's up? I ran 14 and a half yesterday and have a 22-mile bike ride today, keeping it intentional. Let's go, Bobby. It's awesome, man. Dude, you ran a half marathon and some. That's killer. I'll pause for just a second, man. This is wild. I know you and I talked a little bit, talking about I was getting ready to run a marathon. I signed up for a half marathon in Indiana, Carmel, Indiana, just outside of Indianapolis. And I was in Vegas last week, and I was flying in to Indianapolis. This is a bunny trail. It has nothing to do with real estate, guys. But what ended up happening is I was in Vegas, and on Wednesday of last week, I think it was Wednesday, I got an email, and in the email basically said, we have canceled the marathon due to weather. I guess they're in the Indianapolis area. If there's anybody watching from Indianapolis that is from that area, let me know if your weather was bad on Saturday or not. I think you guys might have got storms, but they canceled it on Wednesday, which I've never seen a race be canceled like that. And so I had originally planned on flying in out of Vegas into Indianapolis. A friend was meeting me there. He's going to be my ride. We were going to race on Saturday. He was doing the full, I was doing the half. And then we would drive home. So it left me without a ride back to my house. Bursa, I'm sorry, I don't know how to say your name, but I'm going to call you Bursa. Bursa Tysa, hello, thank you for being here. Where am I from? I live in Kentucky. I live in the beautiful state of Kentucky, the bluegrass state, home of horses and bourbon and all that kind of stuff. That's where I'm located. Oh, you're joining the stream from the school computer? Nice. Well, thank you for doing that. That's awesome. Hopefully don't get in trouble. Hopefully they're okay with you watching me talk. But that's awesome. Glad you're here. But yeah, that's kind of what happened. I didn't get to run my marathon because they canceled it. And, I find it odd, to be honest. I've been racing a long time. I've coached runners and run a lot of 5Ks, 10Ks, marathons, all those type of things. And most of the time they don't cancel that early. And I go back and forth on the logic behind that. To be honest, I think I would rather I would rather it just kind of lead up to that moment and see if they actually had it or not. And then you can just blame the weather versus now it's kind of blame the race directors that if the weather was good. So I'm just kind of curious if anybody's out there in Indianapolis on Saturday, if it was bad. Not that I want to blame anybody, but still, it's just kind of interesting they canceled it. I know a lot of people are training for the Boston Marathon because that marathon is a Boston qualifier. So I think that would just drastically hurt a lot of people's chances to get into the Boston. And that's also sad. So that also led me to having to find a flight back to Kentucky out of Vegas last minute. And of course, that came at an expensive cost. So anyway, that's awesome. Thank you guys for being here. I do appreciate that. So what I'm talking about today is I've got a few articles. I've actually got 4 articles and I got a little bit of a report, and I won't break down the whole entire report because it is extremely lengthy. If you are a realtor, a part of the National Association of Realtors, you can actually download this entire report for free. If you're not, you have to pay, I think that's like $40 for this report. I'm just going to briefly go over some of those things and just kind of mention what it has in it because it's all about the profile of a home buyer. So that's kind of interesting. And then I'm going to be talking about home buyers. Oops, it jumped away from me. There we go. Home buyers and sellers and the generational trends. So what is happening in the generations? Who is the home buyer? What does that look like? And going through all that. Then we're going to talk about, actually, I'm going to begin with survey reveals biggest misconceptions consumers have about the home buying process. And then we'll talk about that. And then I'm going to talk about fraud. I'm going to talk about online real estate fraud and how it's climbed to, it says here, $275 million in 2025, FBI says. $275 million. And I will say this from my own personal experience, we have had a lot of these cases, gotten really close to being where some of our agents got trapped into some of these fraud and these schemes. But fortunately, my agents were keen enough to catch it before it progressed too far. But it's very slippery and it's very dangerous. So we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to end with a cybersecurity checklist, best practices for real estate professionals. So I'm piggybacking off of that article and going into some best practices that we need to think through as real estate agents, that kind of stuff. Bobby, he says, I have seen them cancel swimming in triathlon, but never heard of canceling a running event. Yeah, I'm the same. Exactly, Bobby. Most of the time when you sign up for a race, for those that don't race, almost every race you sign up for is going to say like rain or shine, right? Now, given if you get to that meet and there's lightning and tornadoes and things like that, they'll cancel the meet or the race because that safety, right? That matters. But those things are, that subject to change very quickly, especially in the springtime. And so, again, it's just odd that they would cancel that. I could see them canceling swimming because that could be dangerous as far as weather concerns because of you're out there swimming around and who knows what can happen. So that's awesome. Yeah. Well, very good. That's the lineup for today. Again, thank you guys for all the comments. This is good. I love this excitement and engagement. I love it. And you guys ask questions about myself and that kind of stuff too. Share things about yourself as well and what you're into, hobbies you like, all that kind of stuff. I love getting to know people who are watching and tuning in. It's always good. But with all that being said, quick swig of coffee. Hope you got coffee or tea if that's your jam. Let's go ahead and jump into the actual show and talk through some of these articles. Welcome to the Real Estate Brief. I'm Adam, and today we're cutting through the noise. We're going to get to the truth that is in the news. We're going to look at the data, and I'm going to give you some of my observations and where I believe that you can find opportunity. So if you're ready to gain your real estate edge, let's dive into our very first story of the day. And that story is going to come from Risk Media. Now, I mention this all the time. Risk Media and Inman and those type of sources that I use, they are a membership-based platform to get access to a lot of their articles. Sometimes they give you some free ones here and there. But if you want to get a deep dive into these websites, you do have to pay a membership for that. I'm not an affiliate of any of these. I use them because RS Media and Inman are both real estate agent specific news sources. And they go into deep dive that helps agents stay on point about things. So I share a lot of articles with them. And if you are in the industry, I do encourage you to kind of look into that membership. And it's valuable. There's a lot on there. I mean, they got stuff for agents, brokers, teams, marketing, coaching, technology, you name it. They've got it all on there, right? So you can see all of those things on their sites. Check them out. You subscribe if you're interested, or just come in and tune in and listen to me talk about them all the time, because that's typically what I do. All right, with all that being said, let's jump into our very first article. This one here, like I said, is by RS Media. It says survey reveals biggest misconceptions consumers have about the home buying process. The subheading says New American Funding Survey finds about a fifth of respondents would have liked to know about down payment assistance programs as they began their home buying journey. So this is just going to be a good conversation for us to think through, because when it comes to how we provide value back to certain people and our clients, we need to understand their pain points. And if people are doing research and trying to figure out what those pain points are and what some of the misconceptions are, that's our opportunity as real estate agents to instill, and educate our consumer, our clients. And so if this is what they're talking about, let's take note of this and let's pay attention. So let's jump into this article and kind of dissect this as we go. Oh, hold on one second here. Wrong button. My screen is frozen. Hold on. This is the beautiful thing about live streaming, right? That is not the screen I have up. Hold on one second. We might not be able to share a screen today. You might have to just listen to me talk. Yeah. Let's see if I can redo this. Yeah, you might just have to listen to me talk. That's perfectly fine. We're just going to have to roll with that. So I'll just kind of read through this and you guys can just follow along. So you on TikTok are used to this. This is exactly how I do it every single day. But now those on Twitch and Rumble and everywhere else, sorry, you guys are just going to have to learn how TikTokers watch. All right. So the article begins with saying about 85% of homeowners with mortgages say there is something they wish they had known before starting the home buying process, according to a new survey by mortgage lender New American Funding. About 85% of homeowners with mortgages say there is something they wish. The biggest misconception involves down payments. Down payments. According to the survey, about a fifth of respondents would have liked to know about down payment assistance programs as they began their home buying journey. So a lot of people don't understand that when it comes to down payments, that there is actually a lot of assistance programs that are out there. Maybe it's grants or other type things that they can do that helps produce a little bit of down payment assistance to be able to buy a home. So, and they've heard this whole long-standing idea that 20% down is what's required to be able to buy a house. And there are cases where that is true. But a lot of other cases, and there are a lot of other loans out there that is not true. So this article is literally talking about that. It's saying that there's this idea that they have to come up with 20% down to be able to buy a house, and they got to have all that cash in hand to be able to do that. So there's an opportunity here to kind of share a little bit of information to help guide the consumer along with that misconception. So there are some programs out there that helps them with this. And this is where I would encourage you to get out there with lenders and talk to lenders and multiple lenders and find out what they offer. That's our job, to be able to kind of know where to help lead buyers into a good loan package and knowing what other lenders offer. And it goes on, it says, quote, the long-held belief that you need a 20% down payment to purchase a home is simply not true. When someone assumes they need that much, it can be discouraging. But the reality is much different, said New American Funding President Christy Bunce. Home buyers have a significant number of options when it comes to loan programs that could cut that percentage dramatically. New American Funding can help home buyers find the right solution that works for them. So there is options out there, and there is this misconception, like I said, of 20% down. That's what you need. The 20% down payment myth is fading, but not fast enough. When it comes to the 20% down myth, Gen Z, so the Generation Z, 17.4% is more than half as likely than baby boomers, 11.6%, to have believed that misconception. But the data also shows that when buyers do enter the market, most find a way to purchase a home with far less money up front. So the reality is a lot of your buyers are not aware of the actual cost that it requires for them to have to be able to move forward with a home purchase. So a lot of people just get stuck in renting because they simply do not know. And let's be honest, we take our job a little bit for granted because we know it so well. And a lot of times we can make assumptions that the consumer knows it just as well as we do, or maybe not as well, but know more than we realize they do, right? And one of the things that this is pointing out really quick is that there's this idea, and they've probably been told by others, that they need 20% cash to be able to buy a house. So it might be just as simple as that consumer going and saying, well, look, the average selling price in the area, I'm searching for homes that I like, 3-bed, 2-bath, coming in at $250,000. And then they quickly do the math of 20% down and they go, wow, I don't have that kind of money. I can't buy a house. So is there a demographic? If this is addressing the largest percentage of the consumer, this is one of their biggest concerns, there is a misconception out there. So if we're wanting to think about social media postings, webinars that we might host, videos we might make, this is one of them. This is a great opportunity to kind of help educate buyers. So keep that in mind. The findings show that 72.6% of respondents put down 10% or less when they bought their homes. So think about that, 10% or less. So the majority of people, 72%, put down 10% or less. So the misconception is that 20% is required, but yet 72% of them put down 10% or less. So the reality is it takes a lot less money. So this is good information to put inside of a buyer consultation, right? Baby boomers, 18.1%, were the most likely to make a down payment of more than 20%, which they have more cash, right? However, 59.6% of Gen Z buyers and 44.8% of millennials put down 3.5% or less. Now, that would be a reflection of the age group that is. So if you think about Gen Z and millennials, they're younger. The 3.5% correlates to what an FHA type loan or a government assistant or a government-backed loan would look like. So they're going down that route, probably. Now, that could be some differences there if they have assistant down payment programs, that kind of stuff. But more than likely, they're going the FHA type, VA, those type of loans, right? In fact, 18.1% of baby boomers, 15.5% of Gen X, 10.1% of Gen Z, and 9.9% of millennials surveyed said they didn't make a down payment at all. So there's other options there, right? You could ask for concessions from the seller or other programs that are out there. Maybe there's some grants that allow them to not come up with any extra money. So these are all things as real estate agents we need to be aware of. It says how home buyers in the Northeast, 17.9, were twice. We're going to skip that. Affordability is a top challenge for recent home buyers. So now we get into the next topic. We're talking about now the affordability. Like, what does it look like to be able to afford a house? How do we afford the ability? What is it? What do I need income wise to be able to then go into my market and buy a home? Finding the right home that they could afford was the hardest part for 44% of respondents. I'm not surprised with that percentage. And again, it's 44% where the hardest part was finding a home that they could afford. And we'll get into this a little bit later, I believe, where we start talking about the age of the average first-time home buyer is now increased. I think it's increased like 40. It might have been 38 or 36, last year or the year before. And now it's at 40. So that's increased. And it's because of the high inflation. So, income did not catch up with the inflation that we saw month over month back in the pandemic and going forward. And we still kind of see a higher percentage of inflation than the feds actually want. We're sitting around, like yesterday we talked about, it's like 2.8% is the inflation. They try to get it down to the 2% inflation rate. If they don't do that and it goes higher, they keep the interest rates a little higher, try to adjust that market, all that kind of stuff, right? So this is not a surprising statistic. That just does not surprise me at all. Let's see. Yeah. So about a third of Gen Z and millennials receive financial help from family and friends. Still, the vast majority navigated the process without financial support. Nearly 3/4 of recent homeowners, 71.7%, said they didn't receive financial help from family or friends. Northeastern homeowners received the most financial help, with 32.1% getting up to 20% of the sale price. That was compared to homeowners in the Midwest, 20, and West, 20, and South, 21. Many home buyers underestimate the cost of ownership. So we're looking at it. We already talked about one, right? We had the idea of the 20% down payment kind of being a myth. We kind of debunked that a little bit, right? We get that. The next one we kind of talked about was just that affordability. Like, they think that the home is way out of the price range, so they shut down before they even enter into the market to even explore it as an option. So another opportunity for us as agents is to educate the consumer about the cost of affordability and put it into comparison to what it's actually like to rent versus own. And then understanding the loan packages that are out there and what lenders offer help us to be able to navigate that with our clients. So it requires a little bit, and I'm going to use Bobby's word where he talked about training, intentionality. It requires some intentionality on our part to be able to be engaged with lenders to figure out what it is that they offer and then help our consumer understand that better. Okay, so an opportunity there for us. Now, the next part that they talk about, it says many home buyers underestimate the cost of ownership. So now they don't even understand the cost. Now, they underestimate this. So this comes at the typical term like what? Sticker shock, right? They don't even understand that when they go to buy a house, that it ends up costing them so much more than they were even prepared for. So the opposite of, thinking they can't afford now is now that they realize it's going to cost way more once they do start buying a house. So this is another burden on us to make sure that we are transparent in the actual cost of home ownership and the purchase process. All right, the actual cost of ownership was higher than anticipated for many home buyers, 17.1%. About 16.4% bought a home that needed more work than they expected, and 13% felt they overpaid for their homes. Okay, so smaller percentages a little bit, but these are pain points that we could actually address as agents. So when we're sitting down with somebody and we start talking about the cost of home ownership, we talked about, they mentioned needing more work than they expected. So let's step back just a second and let's think through this. If we truly understand our clients, we've had a buyer consultation, we understand the financial needs, the strain, we understand their careers, their income, all this kind of stuff. We've asked, thought-provoking and challenging open-ended questions to kind of get to the root of their finances and helping them understand the cost of home ownership. Now the burden shifts to when we are in homes and we're showing these houses, we have dialogue, especially if it's a first-time home buyer. We have dialogue in regards to the home that we're showing. We talk through, look, here's the cost of this home. Hey, by the way, I noticed this is old plumbing. This is outdated electrical. This is drywall's cracking. Whatever it might be, we point out and say, look, I'm not an inspector, but I'd hire an inspector, have them inspect this because this could be a maintenance issue going forward, just so you know. And having these dialogues about the true cost of ownership so they're not surprised. Even if they buy the house and there ends up being more than they realize and there's more work, if you as an agent were up front talking through those pain points, they're not going to be mad at you. They're going to understand that you did the best you could. You guided them correctly. You gave them the right advice, and they ultimately made the choice to buy the home. So again, being proactive and helping them through this process. Maintenance and repair costs were higher than expected for 37.2% of respondents, followed by property taxes, 25%, and utility bills, 22%. So you realize now that the buyer themselves are wrestling with the whole idea of what true ownership looks like. And for us, we need to be aware of what these costs are and do a breakdown of those numbers for them to help them understand. So we're doing a buyer consultation, sitting down and breaking down the numbers of true ownership, puts it and frames it in a true picture. And you're going to have a much better satisfied client. Here's the thing. This is what most agents do not do. They don't go this far. And I know why, because you're busy. You don't really have time to sit down with a buyer and spend 2 or 3 hours going over everything. I get that. But you're setting your buyer up to have all kinds of questions that are not answered. They didn't have an opportunity to get clarification. So when you go through the process, if you're not proactive, as you get into the deal, there's an insecurity that's already entered your buyer that now you're gonna have to navigate while you're under the transaction. And that puts tension into the transaction. And if you can handle more of that kind of stuff up front, you're gonna reduce the pressure during the process getting to close. So being proactive and being intentional, like even Bobby talked about with training, is very relevant here. Despite the cost, about a quarter of recent home buyers plan to stay in their homes for the rest of their lives, 24.8%. Baby boomers, 38.1%, were the most likely to want to stay in their homes forever, followed by Gen X and millennials and Gen Z. And 72.9% of respondents would buy the same home if they could do it all over again. Now here's the final quote. It says, in today's housing market, buyers should take advantage of money-saving opportunities, down payment assistance programs, negotiating with sellers, and loans that allow lower down payments are powerful tools that can make the difference between waiting on the sidelines and securing your home, Bunce said. So there's a lot there. Sorry guys, if you're just tuning in, my screen is like not frozen, so I can't share my screen. So just FYI, I'm reading through articles, and we're just gonna have a discussion anyway. You guys can just listen to me talk. But there's a lot of meat in here, and there's a lot of opportunity, right? What we do see is there is a significant percentage of consumers that still believe that a 20% down payment is a mandatory requirement to buy a home. Also, many of these potential buyers are self-selecting out of the market because they overestimate the minimum credit score or the actual cost of owning the home and what those qualifications look like. There's this gap that is perceived that is not closed. They don't understand. They don't understand closing costs, inspections. They don't understand the reality of utility bills and taxes and what all those things look and how that all kind of comes together. As agents, this is an opportunity for us to then educate the consumer. So what I would do is I would go out and if you're comfortable with this, host a webinar or a Zoom call or something, talking to a lender, interviewing them, talking about the myth versus reality of what it costs to do a down payment, what it costs of home ownership, what kind of programs are out there, and create some materials out and put those out on social media addressing these concerns we just went over. And I understand that the need to want to always promote your business and market yourself, but let me just encourage you that really when you think about social media and that kind of marketing, it is much more beneficial when you share something of major value that is focused on helping the person you're sharing it with than just promoting your business. I'm not saying don't promote your business, but in some ways, if you really think about it, offering something of value like this and going through, what is the actual cost to close? What is the down payment actually required? What does that look like percentage-wise? All that kind of stuff actually puts you in a position of a professional and the ultimate source of information. And that is some of the best marketing you can do. That's some of the best marketing you can do because you're providing value back. Your focus is on the client and not you. And that's a very important piece of marketing, especially if you're using social media. So just keep that in mind. I think there's an opportunity here to address a lot of these concerns. All right. With all that being said, this does kind of correlate into what we were just talking about because we're talking about pain points of a buyer and what that looks like and the reality of owning a home. Now let's shift gears just a little bit. And this is an article by the National Association of Realtors titled Home Buyers and Sellers Generational Trends. So now we're going to be talking about the age, like who's buying what and what are they buying and what does that look like? And every year, the National Association of Realtors, Dr. Lawrence Yun, he's the chief economist for the National Association of Realtors. He puts out this article, he puts out this report, and it's a very, very in-depth report. I mean, I can't show you the article, I can't share my screen, but I'll quickly tell you, this report is 117 pages long. 117 pages long. And it breaks down the profile of home buyers and sellers that has transpired over the past year. Now, if you are, and I said this earlier, if you are a member of the National Association of Realtors, you can go to the NAR website and navigate and get to this report and download this for free. You have to log in and you can download this. There is a lot of meat in this report to help you navigate and understand what it is your consumer is looking for and who they are, where they're going and what they're buying and what that looks like. And inside of this, if you will take the time, maybe take a Saturday and read through this, take a highlighter and start highlighting some notes inside of this, pulling some information out, you will begin to understand different niches that you can kind of market to, and you can really understand what their needs are. And that's the most important part. And I just highly encourage you guys to be, again, the word today is intentional. Be intentional with understanding the consumer and what they're doing. So let's go ahead and talk about this. Quick swig of coffee. All right. Like I said, this is by the National Association of Realtors, Dr. Lawrence Yun and his team. Home buyers and sellers generational trends. It says, since 2013, the National Association of Realtors has produced the Home Buyers and Sellers Generational Trends Report. This report provides insights into differences and similarities across generations of home buyers and sellers. The home buyer and seller data is taken from the annual profile of home buyers and sellers. There's highlights from the profile of the home buyers and sellers. You can click on this link. By the way, all the things that I talk about today is in my YouTube channel description. So if you want to click on these links and go to these sites, Those links are in the description of my YouTube channel. So go to the Real Estate Advantage, search for that. You'll see a picture of me doing something like this, and click on that. Consider subscribing, following, all that kind of stuff. Ring the bell. All that kind of stuff still helps me out tremendously. Do appreciate it. But inside of there, you'll find today's live stream, and in the description, you'll see all the links to other articles that I'm talking about. And I'm just skimming through these. Encourage you to go back and read them in more detail. But anyway, buyers continue to finance their home purchases similar to years past. So not much has changed there. 74% of home buyers finance their home purchase, a share that decreases as the buyer's age increases. Younger buyers continue to depend on savings for their down payment. We just talked about this. While older buyers use proceeds from the sale of their previous residence. Can I just pause for just 1 second there, because we want to take note of this. We're going to talk about like baby boomers and this whole idea of the affordability problem and all this kind of stuff. What we need to think about is the next wave of movement and where the cash flow is coming from. We have a drastic exchange of wealth getting ready to take place over the next 10 to 15 years. The baby boomers out there, if you're listening, you guys understand this. Your life circumstances is changing. Your family, your kids are probably more likely grown up and left, maybe married. Some maybe are moving back in, but you are aging. That's the reality of all of us. We are all aging. The baby boomer generation in general, though, is to the point where major life circumstances are beginning to shift. That is a very large demographic. As they begin to do so, it's going to free up more and more real estate to go back onto the market and be rolled over, or estate planning is going to become a big thing because a lot of families that have had kids that have moved away are not interested in coming back and buying the property. So therefore, there's going to be estate planning taking place. So that's a niche to get involved in. Understand how estate planning works and how to handle heirs and all that. I would lean very heavily into that. Start educating yourself, become an expert in that, because that is where we're coming to. But what we want to take note in this report is the younger generation is coming up with the money. The older generation is rolling the money. So they've got the cash. They got a huge amount of equity in their home and they're rolling that cash over. What you're going to probably see is a lot more cash deals happening. So, all right. 26% of younger millennials receive down payment help in the form of a gift or a loan from a friend or relative. Buyers overall were delayed primarily by high rental costs, credit card debt, and student loans. In fact, 39% of younger millennials reported student loan debt with a median balance of $30,000, compared with 27% of older millennials, with a median balance of $40,000. While only 7% of older boomers had student loan debt, those who did had a median balance of $24,000. This may be due not only to their personal educational loans, but also to the accumulation of debt from their children's educational loans. It was most common for buyers to cut spending on luxury, non-essential items and entertainment to save for their home purchases. People are beginning to make conscious decisions in saving and cutting out a lot of the fluff. You know, we went through this era where it's like entertainment was just huge and every streaming service you wanted to buy, and you had probably every Hulu and Disney and Netflix and you name it, right? But now what's happening is a lot of people are wising up saying, I don't need all that entertainment. I really want a home. So they're beginning to readjust to that. All right, 2026 home buyers and sellers generational trends. And this is just a quick summary about what this is. It says the largest generation of buyers, 42% younger and older boomers. Okay, that's your largest generation of buyers. At 42% is the younger and older boomers. It's very simple then. When it comes to thinking through niches, right? Is if that is your largest generation of buyers, that's going to be your largest pool of buyers. It just is logic. So when you start thinking through your marketing pieces for this year and the next few years, what is it that the baby boomers are looking for? What type of homes? If you're a builder, this is your biggest market. What kind of homes do these people want to buy? What are they looking for? If you're an agent, what is it that these people are looking for? What is it that this generation needs? So think through what it is. Highest share of multi-generational buyers is at 19% is Gen Xers. Now, there's a very simple reason to why that is. If you have the baby boomers that are retiring and getting older, you have the Gen Xers that are buying a multi-generational home to do what? Move their parents in and take care of their parents. So that's a big movement. It's not as high as a percentage as the 42% is as the boomers as being the buyer, but at 19%, there's another niche here, niche here. How do you say it? Niche or niche? I don't know. That's a debated thing, right? 19% is the Gen Xers. So what does the homes look like for multi-generational? Think through those type of homes. If you're thinking about, specializing in that area, then you're probably thinking along the lines of, maybe it's a duplex. Maybe it's a home with a nice walkout basement with all the amenities, full bathroom, kitchen, living room, bedroom with windows, all that kind of stuff with light, with a nice flat yard and a driveway that goes around, maybe even a garage. Then upstairs, you have all the amenities that the Gen Xers need to be able to live there with their families. Okay, so these are the type of homes that you might be seeing for that generation. Highest share of single female buyers ever is at Gen Zers, 35%. Most racially diverse generation of buyers, number one is Gen Zers. Highest median household income of buyers, the older millennials. So older millennials is the highest median household income of buyers at $132,700. Largest generation of sellers, this is another one, pay attention to this one, 55% is younger and older boomers. So you have boomers on both sides of the aisle as the largest percentage. You have them as the buyers and you also have it as the sellers. Fascinating, right? So if you're really thinking about marketing, that's a big niche right there. Big one. Longest median seller tenure is 15 years, and that's the older boomers. That means the average person is living in their home about 15 years. Now, I was going to go through a report. Since I can't share my screen, I don't want to take the time to do that because you really need to be able to read through that. So I might just postpone that until another day. With that being said, we're going to switch gears now. We're going to switch gear to a whole entire conversation into kind of what is real estate fraud? What does that look like? Cybersecurity. How can we protect our consumers? How can we protect our clients? And how can we protect ourselves? All right. So this is a conversation, man, if I was to go back 5-6 years ago, the conversation that I'm having with my own agents would have not even been a thought. Some of these schemes that are happening where people are imposing and appearing as if they are owners of vacant land, they have all their credentials, everything looks legit because of AI, and they are duping people into listing the properties and getting them under contract and collecting funds. And this is happening all the time. It's wild stuff. As a matter of fact, we had a case just about a year or two ago where we actually had to work with the FBI to then shut something down. And this is happening. And fortunately, that was the most extreme case. That was the first time it hit us that we were not aware of it, that it was that prevalent. We never thought it would, kind of happen to us type of thing. You never really thought about it. Then that happened. And then we began talking about it as a company. And we began talking about it as an agent. We began talking about protocol, what to notice. And we started having these conversations that now our agents have been able to catch a lot of this. And even when they're not sure, they pause and they ask questions. And then they send it to me or another broker, and we review it and say, yeah, this is very suspect. Here's what I'd advise, right? So they're very proactive. They're very keen. They're very thinking through these type of things because this is becoming a very big thing. And in this is, again, an NAR report. And in this latest report, it's going to show a widening divide and how different, how broad and how many different schemes and tactics that are out there and how much money has been stolen. And this is where it gets really, really sad. So the title of this, the headline says, online real estate fraud climbed to $275 million in 2025. The FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center received more than 12,000 real estate fraud complaints last year. 12,000. Guys, that's a lot. That is a lot. That's a lot of money. Cyber criminals stole more than $275 million through real estate related fraud from at least 12,368 victims last year, according to a new report from the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. Now, there is a link there. I'm going to go ahead and just click that. I don't know what all this. Oh, this is a big report. Yeah, this is a whole nother. I'm sorry I can't share my screen, guys. If you're just tuning in, my screen is frozen for some reason. When I go to share it, it's frozen. I can't get it to move, so I can't do that. But I will actually postpone going through that profile anyway. We're gonna focus on just today. But there is a report on this link, and if you go to my YouTube channel, go to the description, you can find the link to this article, and there's all kinds of links inside it, all kinds of reports inside of this. We're not gonna go into that. We're gonna just touch on the surface. Those figures are higher than 2024 and 2023. Which saw 9,359 complaints, totaling more than 173 million in losses, and 9,521 complaints, totaling about 145 million, respectively, but significantly less than 2022's peak of 11,727 complaints and a whopping 397 million in losses. So one thing to note, and this is a positive note, if you read those numbers, we're getting better at recognizing this. So it began to ramp up, and then it peaked. And then things started taking place. And I will say a lot more training started coming out. Agents and brokers started talking about this. FBI was very informative. The National Association of Realtors became proactive in this. Things began to kind of start rolling. Title companies began sending out certain type of statements on the way that they would do certain things and clarifying what they would and not do, like they would never send wire instructions through email and that kind of stuff. So they began to clarify and how to protect the consumer. So these are all efforts that is bringing that number down, but yet still we're in the millions here of a lot of deception going on, a lot of thievery. And this is sad and very scary. IC3 considers financial loss from a real estate investment or fraud involving rental or timeshare property as real estate fraud. It's fraud. The FBI report outlines how just about anyone at any age and real estate experience level can fall victim to these crimes, with persons in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s submitting an equal amount of real estate related fraud reports last year. And let me just pause. Sometimes when you get involved in an experience like this, either be an agent or actually the victim, you could easily fall into say, I'm an idiot, or I feel horrible. How could I let this happen? You could fall into the whole lie that you should have known better. But here's the thing is, like, even some of my most experienced agents can fall for this because it's that good. When something is that manipulative and that good, it's not your fault for falling for it. It's going to happen. Now, we can do things to help equip and be more proactive, but it's not the fault of the victim. Never the fault of the victim. It's the person's intent behind what they're doing to deceive the victim and being so good at it that it actually deceived them. And so we don't want to fall into that trap. So if you're an agent out there that fell for this and you hurt somebody because of it, it's not your fault, guys. These guys are good. And if you're a victim that end up losing money, again, not your fault. These people are good. The report, which notes that total cybercrime losses have reached about 20.9 billion, emphasizes how AI is shaping fraud by helping schemers appear more convincing and thwarting victims by becoming harder to detect. So that's the point, right? They're very difficult. I mean, you just think about it. And now we're getting better at this even too. But if you go to TikTok or Instagram or whatever, you go to the Reels, the AI in there is getting so good that you don't know what's real. Like, the videos look so real. Sometimes they look like home videos and they look so real. So AI has complicated this entire endeavor. And again, it's not the fault of the victim. AI technology enables the creation of convincing synthetic content, such as social media profiles and personalized conversations, often in mass quantities, the report says. People have manipulated video and audio similarly for decades, but the widespread availability of this developing technology makes it possible to create high-quality content. In July 2025, Realtor News covered a growing cryptocurrency scheme known as pig butchering. Okay, I've heard about this. The practice of scammers gaining trust and gradually encouraging victims to invest more and more money into false accounts by showing fake profits. The U.S. Secret Service said this particular scam resulted in $15 million in total in losses for 60 real estate agents. So that's a lot of money, $15 million. So what is it they're doing? Pig butchering is basically they're thinking that they're investing in something good. They're giving financial statements showing that there's a profit happening and maybe there's a future payout coming. And then, hey, take advantage of this now, invest more, right? And they can make it look good. They can have all the P&Ls. They can use AI to create websites and, emails and everything. It can look so legit. It can be sold so well. So this is just things to be aware of. Let me know in the comments, guys. Feel free to share. Have you guys been involved, or have you experienced or seen or heard anything in regards to real estate fraud? Right? You know somebody that has. I mean, I would venture to guess there are people watching right now that have had that experience. Agent awareness and prevention. The National Association of Realtors published a window the law video warning real estate professionals about these scams, along with an NAR crypto scam awareness one sheet that outlines red flags and best practices. I actually went over this with my agents. We talked about this, and this is the one sheet, and I'm going to briefly go this and we'll go back. Crypto scam awareness, June 2025. It says red flags. Okay, so here's some red flags, and I wish I could share my screen again. I'll have this all in the description of my YouTube channel, okay? It'll all be there. Red flags. Exercise caution if a client asks you to invest in cryptocurrency, and watch for these red flags. The client rapidly develops a trusting relationship with you. In other words, they're proactive, they're smooth, they're personal, they're relational, right? They get you on the emotional aspect. The client makes an impression of wealth and investment knowledge, claiming to have made their money through cryptocurrency. The client promises fast and high returns on your crypto investment. The client creates urgency to make a quick decision to invest. In other words, we need it now. This is the opportunity, right? The client communicates only by phone, text, or email, and refuses in-person interactions. They won't meet in person. They want to phone, text, email, right? All the digital ways I can still keep the facade going. Recommended practices. Never respond to unsolicited texts, social media messages, or emails soliciting an investment. I agree. There is absolutely no reason to respond to a random text that you did not ask for. A social media message that you get that sounds so plausible, it makes you think that you're something great and talks about how great you are and how whatever you're doing, and please invest in us, we'll help you make you rich and wealthier. Or any emails asking you to invest in something, right? Be cautious when sharing personal information online, as scammers will exploit personal details to build trust. And I would be very cautious here. I would be highly cautious here. You got to understand that as AI gets better, the data mining gets better. What you share online, even on social media, guys, it's not a journal, it's data. Like if you talk about your personal life and your personal struggles and there's a vulnerability there are AI models that scammers can take advantage of to data mine that to address those needs in you and the personal issues that you might have and you're going through because you posted certain things. And they will use that. Recognize the red flags listed above. Thoroughly research any investment platform before making an investment. Search online corporate records. Verify these companies. If they are a true company, they're going to be filed with the Secretary of State of that state that they're associated with. Check for registration with regulatory bodies, such as the Securities and Exchange Commission. If they are an investment firm, if they're doing any kind of investments, they have got to be registered there. They don't have a choice. Immediately report suspected cryptocurrency fraud to ic3.gov and local law enforcement. So that's the one sheet. Brokers are encouraged to have a risk reduction plan in place and regularly offer AI, cybersecurity, and wire fraud training for agents and staff. And there's, again, a link here that takes you somewhere. It goes to the Consumer Guide, How to Protect Against Real Estate Wire Fraud. It goes to that link. So if you're a broker out there listening, there is an article here that you can take and you can use as that training for your agents. The FBI IC3 report describes a success story where preparation and awareness prevented a fraudulent transaction from being completed. The individuals who were closing on a house received an email impersonating their attorneys and mistakenly sent a large wire transfer to a scammer. A wire was submitted at their bank for over $449,000, and was sent to the recipient's bank. After the fraud was discovered, the individuals reported the fraud to their bank, and their attorneys made separate attempts to contact the recipient bank with negative results, the FBI report states. Upon receiving the IC3 complaint filed about the incident, the IC Recovery Asset Team immediately initiated the financial fraud kill chain to request a freeze of the fraudulent account at the recipient's bank. The RAT received notification from the recipient bank that the full amount was still in the account and on hold. So they were obviously able to get their money, right? So that's crucial. Proactiveness, understanding these scams. And again, title companies, they will not ask for you to send wire funds with a link inside of an email. They're not going to do that. And if they do, they need to stop doing that, because that's exactly what these fraudsters do. So if you are a title company out there and that's what you're doing, stop, because you're actually confusing the consumer into thinking that's the way money's done. I don't think any do, actually, but still, that $449,000. That's those people's life savings. Maybe they were rolling over from selling another house, but it's years of living in that home, building equity that they would have lost. Fortunately, they were proactive enough and they were able to recoup that money. All right, so it's a valid thing, man. Whew. Valid thing. Okay, to piggyback off of that, there's a link at the very bottom of that article that says read more, and it opens up another article. Okay, and this is still on the National Association of Realtors website. It's titled Cybersecurity Checklist, Best Practices for Real Estate Professionals. So let's talk about this and we'll wrap up today's show. Cybercrime can be devastating to real estate professionals and their clients. The following checklist offers some best practices to help you curb the risk of cybercrime, because data protection and cybersecurity laws differ across the country. NAR recommends that you work with an attorney licensed in your state to help you develop cybersecurity related programs, policies, and materials. So think of a broker, think of it as an agent. These are proactive things that we need to be doing in our brokerages to protect our agents and the consumer, okay? The first thing that they mention here in this article is email and password hygiene. Okay, so let's think through this. It says never click on unknown attachments or links, as doing so can download malware onto your device. You don't know what that malware is. It's unconfirmed. You do not know if it's got a virus, if it has anything else in it. You don't know. So if you do not know that you're supposed to be getting an attachment from somebody and it's a random email, do not click that attachment. Never click that attachment. Unless you know a specific person that is sending you something and you've been waiting for it, that's fine, because you know and you were expecting it. But if you get any other emails with an attachment that you don't know and we're not expecting, don't open it. Don't click on it. Use encrypted email, a transaction management platform, or a document sharing program to share sensitive information. So encrypted email is not like you just going into Gmail and thinking, well, they have security protocol. Encrypted means it requires authentication of the other person, the other party, to do something to access that information. In other words, it's not in the body of the email. It's embedded in it. It's encrypted. You cannot just access it by just opening the email, okay? The transaction management platform, we're thinking like, DocuSign, Dotloop, things like that. Again, they're locked under, right? That's what they're there for. They protect that sensitive information. That's how you should be sharing documents. That's what you should be doing. That is that encrypted process to protect clients and yourself. Carefully guard login and access credentials to email and other services used in the transaction. So keep track of those things. Lock them down. Regularly purge your email account and archive important emails in a secure location. And this is, you don't realize this, but like holding on to thousands of emails, you're keeping spam and or malware. You could accidentally later click on something or access something, and it's just sitting in your email. Look, you really need to be going through your emails. And I understand a lot of people don't do this, but inbox zero is a great thing. Not only does it help you with time management and consistency and follow up and all that kind of stuff, it actually helps you to reduce the amount of risk that comes from emails. And this is important. So I would encourage you to do that. Archive and folderize, put folders in there to put important emails you want to keep, delete the rest. Use long, complicated passwords such as phrases or a combination of letters, numbers, or symbols. Okay. your phones and your apps, they can suggest like these really complicated passwords, and those are very hard to crack. That's what they're doing. They're encrypting. They're almost encrypting your login because no one can guess those long, complicated passwords, right? They're not tied to anything specific. And then your phone itself will use that and protect it under its own lock and key. Do not use the same password for multiple accounts. Think about it. If they hack one, they get access to all. Okay? Everything. Consider using a password manager. Talked about that. Use two-factor authentication whenever it is available. Look, I hear agents all the time kind of complain about this. It's so annoying when I have to use Google Authenticate or Okta sign in, all those type of platforms, which is your two-factor authentication, because it's an extra step. And I get it. People want to get in, they want to get going, and they don't want to have to do that extra step. Because what it will do is you'll log in, and then it'll say, use your verification, your authenticator on your phone. And then you have to unlock your phone, and then use the number, and then put that number in to authenticate that you are who you are. Do it. Even if it doesn't make sense and it annoys you, it is the best protection because you don't just need a password anymore. If somebody was to get your password, they would also have to have your phone. Not only would they also have to have your phone, they would have to have your face or your hands to unlock it, to get to the authenticator, to be able to get the code, to be able to enter in. So you think about that. That's a lot of scenarios for someone to be able to break into your stuff, right? So, and this two-factor authentication is becoming more and more commonplace. So my advice is get over the annoyance of it because it is the best protection you could ever have as far as locking down your online accounts. All right. And it says avoid doing business over public unsecured Wi-Fi. It's one thing to go into a coffee shop and just do some simple work here and there. But man, if you're doing something that does not need to be out there, those Wi-Fi are extremely dangerous. If you're in a very busy shop, somewhere, a coffee shop or whatever, a scammer could be sitting right there with a capture device and capturing everything that you're doing. So I would not do anything that has, privacy concerns or information about transfer of money or login type stuff. I would go in, I would do the most basic type of work in a public Wi-Fi setting. Other IT-based security measures, this is B, keep antivirus software and firewalls active and up to date. Keep your operating system and programs patched and up to date. Yeah, and guys, a lot of people are scared of updates because it's like every time I update, something goes wrong. Do you realize most of your updates are all about security protocols? Almost every update you get is strictly addressing security vulnerabilities in your system or that the designers of the program have found and those exploits and now are fixing them. So it might annoy you and it might change things on your device, but it's the designers and the owners of those apps and your operating systems and all that trying to protect you from a vulnerability that they have found in their system. Regularly back up critical data, applications, and systems and keep backed up data separate from online systems. Don't download apps without verifying that they are legitimate and won't install malware or breach privacy. Look, if you're browsing online and all of a sudden something just pops up and it says, "Hey, great app, for blah blah blah, whatever, help you to do this." If you don't know what it is, don't click that. Even if it sounds good, right? It sells, man. Don't click those things. Don't click on links in texts from unknown senders. Definitely don't do that. Like if you don't know the person that sent you the email, do not click any links. Don't click any. If you don't know who they are, do not click links. Prior to engaging any outside IT provider, review the applicable privacy policies and contracts with your attorney. And this is a good point. There are a lot of fake IT providers out there that says, we do cloud IT work and all those type of things. And they make it sound like they're just your advocate. They're going to come on beside you and help you fix problems in your computer for a monthly fee, whatever it might be. And at the same time, they're the scammers, right? So what does their agreement says? Verify who they are. Again, go back and check the Secretary of State for your state, make sure they're registered. All those type of things is still a policy that I would apply to even that. Okay, C, law, policy, and insurance considerations. In collaboration with your attorney, develop a written disclosure warning clients of the possibility of transaction-related cybercrime. NER has created a wire fraud email notice template that you and your counsel may use and adapt. Again, inside this article is a link to that. Stay up to date on your state's laws regarding personally identifiable information. The development and maintenance of cyber and data-related business policies and other required security-related business practices. Develop and implement the following policies. Okay, this is speaking more directly to broker owners out there. 1, document retention and destruction policy. 2, cyber and data security policy. And 3, breach response and breach notification policy. Ensure that your staff and licensees have reviewed and are following all implemented policies. Review your current insurance coverage and ask your insurance agent about cyber insurance and the availability and applicability of products such as social engineering, fraud endorsements, and computer and electronic crime riders. We've done that as a company. Our agents have that protection. We have that as a company. If you're a broker, these are things you definitely need to have in place. You need some insurance and some protection if you find yourself in a situation where you are the one that actually caused any harm by accident even. So agents, ask your broker, make sure that they have these type of insurance policies for your protection. They're very crucial. They're very important. And we talked about how much this is picking up, how much this fraud and this crime is happening, right? We're talking about this, millions and millions of dollars. So what do we do as agents to protect ourselves and our clients? This is all so, so important. This has been a very good conversation. Hopefully you've gotten some value here, because a lot of times we fall into the idea that this won't happen to me, I don't need to worry about it. But you will worry about it. Just like any kind of insurance, right? You don't need it until you need it. Well, you won't think about it until it happens to you, and then it's too late. So these are things that we got to do to be proactive. We've got to be proactive. So just, I don't know. It's a great conversation. I love this kind of stuff because it helps shore up the risk of what we do and helps us to be better at our jobs and protect our consumers. And we need to think about this too, is when the outside world is always constantly putting pressure and trying to say real estate agents don't have value anymore, right? They say AI can replace us. You know, the whole idea that our commission model was challenged and, you know, trying to eliminate us and the relevancy of what kind of value we provide. And all the consumers out there, not all, but a lot of consumers out there and a lot of news media talk about how we just don't really help much. If we just stop for just 1 second and consider this one topic alone, and realize if we fully understood the risk of this kind of fraud and how it's ramping up and what this kind of looks like and how AI works, we protect our clients. And when we can articulate those risks to our clients really well and help guide them through what to look for, we protect them. And they will talk about that protection, especially if they talk to somebody that maybe decided to go alone and not buy a house through a realtor. And they ended up getting involved in fraud because they were trying to go it on their own and they fell into some of these tactics thinking it was a good thing. Because here's one of the things that happens all the time. Let's say you're a seller and you decide to list your home for sale by owner. A for sale by owner posted on all the syndication websites as a for sale by owner. Who do you think these scammers target? The easiest one to target is going to be your for sale by owner. They're going to start sending emails like that we get as real estate agents. We will pay cash for your property. Sign this contract. Or they'll say, hey, we got an offer for you for your home. We're going to give you this amount, right? And it looks like a legitimate offer. The contract, everything looks just like a legitimate offer, right? And they fall into these traps. That's the target. So if we fully understand these risks, and part of our listing presentation is talking about these things, we're better equipping our sellers to understand what this are, and even our buyers, that even though they are listing with us, they have friends that might not list with us and go the solo route. They could very easily fall into one of these traps. And that client is going to tell them, you know, my realtor, when they came in and they talked about real estate and listing my home, in their listing presentation, they talked about this. They told me that this is what could happen. You just added value to the transaction. Especially if that person lost thousands and thousands of dollars. You protected the client, and they will talk about it. They will talk about it. So it's great value. It's a great value add. It's something that AI cannot do. Matter of fact, AI is the enemy in this scenario because it's being utilized and leveraged to create the scam. Us as people can educate the client. So just good things to remember. All right, I went over. Just so you guys know, I've got meetings in the morning tomorrow, so I will not be live streaming tomorrow. I do plan on coming back on Friday morning, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, right here where you're watching me now. So just know tomorrow I will not have a live stream, but Friday I will. And hopefully you guys can come back and we can have a whole conversation about that, go through some more news articles, that kind of stuff. I hope you did find some value here. I do appreciate, I really greatly appreciate all the comments and communication we had today. And even at the beginning, just having some fun and chit chatting. That's always good, guys. I love knowing kind of what you're into. Like, I think it's exciting to hear what you guys are doing. Sometimes it's just me talking. Like, I would like to get to know you guys and know what you're going through and where you are in your life. And if you're real estate agents and that kind of stuff, I would love to know you guys. It's hard to know you when it's just a text message, you know, or like a comment, whatever. But it gives me some insight into who you are and who's watching. So I do appreciate that. Thank you guys for talking and communicating. I just really greatly appreciate that. Well, with all that being said, let's go ahead and wrap this up, and we'll see you guys on Friday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. That is your real estate brief for today. If you found this helpful, please consider hitting the like button to tell YouTube you would like more of this type of content. Consider following me on TikTok too. Thank you guys for being here. And consider subscribing to a community of real estate agents that are focused on building a business that is 100% relationship focused first. There is always so much more, but that's going to have to wait until Friday. I'll see you then. Take care.